The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Foyle Legal. For advice tailored to your situation, please consult a qualified legal professional. Welcome to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal, your trusted source for understanding personal injury claims in Western Australia. Each week, we simplify complex legal issues, from motor vehicle accidents to workplace injuries, so you can confidently navigate your rights and claim the compensation you deserve.
Ever seen one of those slow-mo crash test videos? You know, the ones where the car crumples like an accordion?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of wild when you think about it, how something that's meant to get us from A to B can become, well, a force of impact like that.
Oh, right.
And that brings us to today's deep dive. Seatbelt safety.
It's one of those things people think is pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
Buckle up and you're good to go.
Thanks.
But the how and the why of how those things actually work to protect us, especially here in WA with all the ins and outs of our specific laws, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of research articles and guidelines that you sent over. Everything from how seatbelts are actually engineered to the legal ramifications of not wearing one, especially when it comes to kids.
Yeah.
So no time for fender benders today. Let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Actually, we found some pretty wild stats from the the Transport Accident Commission.
Right.
I think this really highlights why we're talking about this. So, did you realize that wearing a seatbelt can actually reduce your risk of fatal injury by up to 50% if you're in a crash?
See, that's a big one. It really drives home the point, doesn't it? It's not just about avoiding a fine. We're talking about drastically increasing your chances of walking away from an accident.
Exactly.
But how do these things, these deceptively simple straps, how do they actually accomplish that? You pulled some info from Foyle Legal about the physics of it all.
Yeah. So picture this. You're driving down the highway, maybe listening to your favorite tunes or something, and then suddenly, bam, you come to a dead stop. But here's the thing. Your body, it wants to keep moving at the same speed.
Oh.
That's inertia.
Inertia.
Now, without a seatbelt, you're essentially a projectile.
Okay.
Aimed right at the windshield.
It's an image I could have done without, honestly.
Sorry. But you get what I mean. The seatbelt, it acts as this crucial restraining force, and it spreads that impact over the stronger parts of your body, your hips, and your chest. Think of it like catching a fastball. You wouldn't use a stiff hand, right?
Yeah.
You move it back with the ball to absorb all that energy. Same idea here.
So it's like, instead of your face catching that fastball,
Yeah.
the seatbelt helps your body decelerate with the car.
Exactly. In a more controlled way.
In a much more controlled way, yeah.
Now imagine your body's like an egg in a crash.
Okay.
No seatbelt. It's going to splat against the dashboard, right?
Right.
But with the seatbelt, it's like that egg is nestled safely in the carton, distributing the force and preventing a catastrophic break.
But that's actually a great analogy. So the seatbelt is essentially there to prevent those really bad injuries you hear about. Whiplash, internal damage, all of that.
Not yet. And it goes even further than that even. Modern seatbelts are packed with even more technology to try and minimize those forces even more.
Okay, so we've got this incredible, life-saving tech in our cars.
Yeah.
But what happens when we don't use it? We looked into the specific laws we've got here in WA, and I'm guessing it's not just a slap on the wrist if you get caught.
No, you're right. It's way more serious than people realize. We're talking fines, demerit points.
Oh, wow.
And even legal ramifications later on if you're in an accident. The WA government websites actually lay it all out pretty clearly.
So break it down for us. What are we looking at penalty-wise for adults who just choose not to buckle up?
Well, if you're caught driving or even riding in a car unrestrained here in WA, you're looking at a fine. And it's not cheap either.
No.
We're talking anywhere from $550 to $900.
Oh.
Yeah, and to top it off, you get at least 4 demerit points.
See, that's not just a dent in your wallet. That's like a genuine hit to your driving record, too.
Yeah.
It makes you realize those few seconds of buckling up are definitely worth it.
Definitely.
But I know what really gets me, especially as a parent, is the thought of my kids not being properly secured in the car. What's the deal there?
This is where it gets, really interesting, a bit concerning too. In WA, get this, the penalties for not properly restraining a child under 16, they're actually higher than for an adult not wearing a seatbelt.
Wait, are you serious? So I could be in more trouble for my kid not being buckled up than for myself.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Hey.
It just shows how seriously they're taking child passenger safety here in WA. And we're not just talking about strapping them in any old way either. There are very specific age and size requirements for what type of restraint they need.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, which I guess makes sense.
Right.
We're talking like different types of car seats, booster seats. See, this is where it gets a little hazy for me. Luckily, you pulled those guidelines from Walja. Can we go through those?
Absolutely. Let's break it down by age, make it super clear for everyone.
Okay, great.
So for the littlest ones, babies 0 to 6 months old, they have to be in a rear-facing restraint.
Right.
And super important, they cannot be in the front passenger seat at all if you have more than one row of seats in your car.
Makes sense. So those first few months are all about keeping those tiny humans as safe as possible in the back.
Exactly. Then, from 6 months to 4 years old, they can stay rear-facing, or they can switch to a forward-facing restraint.
Okay.
But still with a harness, of course. And again, no front seat unless it's like totally unavoidable. And even then, there are a lot of conditions.
So rear-facing for as long as possible is the main takeaway there.
You got it.
Got it.
Now, between 4 and 7 years old, they graduate to a forward-facing restraint with a harness or a booster seat.
Right.
Still in the back, of course.
Of course.
But here's where it gets a little tricky, and probably where a lot of parents might be surprised. Kids over 7. They actually still need to use booster seats until they're tall enough to pass something called a 5-step test.
A 5-step test. See, now you got me curious. I've got to admit, I've never even heard of this 5-step test. What does that involve?
So it's a really important check to make sure that the adult seatbelt fits them correctly, because they've
That's
still got those smaller bodies. There are 5 specific things they look at: their height, how the lap belt sits, if the shoulder strap's in the right spot, that kind of thing.
Okay.
The Department of Transport website has a really helpful page that breaks it all down. We'll make sure to link it in the show notes.
I'll have to check that out because that's news to me. See, even for someone who thinks they're pretty on top of car safety, there's always more to learn. But it shows just how important it is to stay in the loop, especially when it comes to the kids.
100%. And this actually leads us to another important thing to talk about with seatbelt safety. What happens after an accident?
Right. Because even with all the prep in the world, these things still happen.
Exactly.
You found some good info on what steps to take if you're ever in that situation, especially if seatbelt use is a factor. Okay, so let's say worst case scenario, we're in an accident.
Right.
What do we need to do? What are those immediate things we should be thinking about?
So the absolute first thing always is to just take a breath.
Right.
And assess the situation. Make sure you and everyone involved are safe. Secure the scene, And if it's necessary, contact emergency services right away.
Of course, safety first. But let's say we're feeling all right, no major, visible injuries. Are you saying it's still important to get checked out by a doctor?
100%. You wouldn't believe how many injuries, like whiplash especially, don't show any symptoms right away. Getting that medical evaluation, well, first, it makes sure you're getting the care you need.
Yeah.
But it also creates a record of your condition,
Oh.
which can be super important for insurance later on.
Makes sense. Like bumping your head, better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And speaking of documentation, what else should we be doing at the scene to, kind of protect ourselves?
Your phone's your best friend here.
Yeah.
If it's safe to do so, of course, document everything. Take photos, the damage to both cars, the position of the cars on the road,
Right.
even the weather conditions.
Oh, interesting.
Write down the date, the time, the exact location, if you can.
Right.
If there are any witnesses, try to get their contact info too.
And this is all especially important if, seatbelts are a factor in the accident. Right?
Exactly. All that documentation. It can be so valuable if there are any legal issues or disputes about who's at fault down the line.
Okay, so we've got the medical evaluation. We're taking photos, writing things down. It can still feel a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
Oh, for sure.
Is there anything else we can do to, feel a little more prepared just in case this ever happens?
Here's a simple one. Keep a little folder in your glove compartment, just with the essential documents.
Okay, like what?
A copy of your license, your insurance information,
Right.
even just a blank page to jot down notes. Or you use your phone, you can store that info there securely too.
Great tip, actually. It's all about being, proactive, right?
Exactly.
I have to say, this whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. From the nitty-gritty physics of these life-saving straps to all the legal stuff and, just being prepared for the unexpected.
Well, that's kind of the point, right? Knowledge is power, and when it comes to It could literally be the difference between walking away from an accident or, well, something much worse.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So listeners, next time you get behind the wheel, remember this conversation. Buckle up, stay informed, and drive safely out there.
Thank you for listening to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal. We hope this episode helped clarify your rights and next steps in your injury claim. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and visit foylelegal.com for more useful information. See you next time.